Hey everybody, welcome to today's lesson. It's not really so much a lesson as it is just a quick demonstration on how to use Google Sheets. We are going to be using Google Sheets in class on Monday, so I wanted to make sure that you guys are familiar with kind of some of the different functionalities and how to make line graphs and how to label them, etc., etc. So let me go ahead and just dive right in. First things first, I've decided that I wanted to graph the New York City population growth from 1990 to 2020. So I'm going to give my table a title, New York City population growth 1990 to 2020. Okay. And now I need to populate my years. So as you guys can see, I copy pasted the population data in, but I did want to show you just a cool function of anytime that you need to do linear numbers or numbers that are in order, how you can use Google Sheets to make it faster. So I could sit here and I could type all of the years, but that would take a long time. So what's really cool is if you highlight these numbers and you drag this box down, then it should populate all of those years for you. Okay, now I don't know if this is going to come in handy on Monday. We're not doing anything quite this lengthy, but in the future, if you're graphing something that has a long set of numbers, instead of typing every single one individually, you can do it that way, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, now I want to start formatting this so that it looks nice. So just a couple of things. I'm not a fan of Arial as my font. So I'm actually going to go ahead and highlight my whole table, and I'm going to change that to a font that I find more appealing, something plain still. I personally like Oswald. And let's go ahead and make sure all of these are the same size. So I'm going to make it all a size 12. Okay. Now looking at this, another thing, my title of my table and my different variables, I want to make sure those are bolded. I want to make sure that those are, like, I can tell that that's what we're looking at here. Okay, so now we're on our way to kind of making this a little bit neater, more organized, more clean looking. But you may or may not notice that this is all in one cell, this New York City population growth. It looks like it's in 3 cells, but it's not actually in 3 cells. Like if I type something into here, okay, that would now cover up that other component. So in order to avoid that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, since I have column A and column B with typing in it, I'm going to go ahead and merge those cells. And what that's going to do is that's going to make those 2 cells into one long big cell. So up here up top, there is a merge function button right here. So merge cells, if I click that, it will merge those 2 cells together. Now, just looking at this, you might be thinking, well, that's annoying. Now it's cut off. So yes, I need to make my columns just a little bit bigger. And actually, I think my title should be at least 2 sizes bigger than my actual axes titles or my actual variables. So now I'm going to have to, that might be a little bit big. Let's make it 16. Let's type in 16. Okay. So now I need to increase the size of my columns in order to make that title go in or to fit in between the 2 cells. So the best way that I can think to do this, because I want both of my columns to be distributed evenly, is I'm going to highlight both or all of my data. And if I go up top, this little bold line appears, sort of. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that over. And as you can see, it only increased the size of the one, which I thought it was going to increase the size of both, which I just practiced doing. So I'm not sure why it didn't. But let's try it this way. Let's maybe do this. Hold down A, Control, hold down B. And now let's try to shift those over. Let me not use this. I have like a wireless mouse, and sometimes it's like so much more effort than it needs to be. Okay, so there we go. Now we've increased both of those to the size. So the key, my friends, is to use the control button to select both columns. Now this is still a little bit big, so I'm just going to drag this over so that it just fits my title. Okay, perfect. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to organize my data. I don't really like when it left aligns. I like everything centrally aligned. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of the data again. And if I go to this button right here, horizontal align, I can select center align. And now all of my data is centrally aligned, which I think looks much nicer. okay? From here, I want to make sure that I add borders to my table, because right now this does look pretty nice as it is, but if I were to print this out, this wouldn't have all those neat lines that Excel is providing it right now, or that Google Sheets is providing it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and again select all of my data in my table, okay? And I'm going to find the borders button up here, and I'm going to go ahead and select all borders so that I get nice, neat borders on my table. Now, again, this is personal preference, and that's okay if you don't really care, but I like a nice thicker border, so I'm going to select the thicker border for this. Okay, so now my data table looks really nice. It's nice and organized. It has a title. What is it missing? Well, it's missing one thing. Anytime you create a data table for a specifically a scientific report, but even in any sort of report, you should always include what's called a table description, or a table or a figure title. Okay, so in order to do that, because you guys are going to have to do that in class, you're going to go to Insert, and you're going to go to Drawing. And in Drawing, you can insert a text box. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and insert my text box. Again, I changed my fonts to be Oswald, so I actually want to keep it consistent. And I'm going to select Oswald Light just so it looks neater. And I'm going to say Table 1. This is because this is the first table I'm creating. If I were to make more than one table, I would have Table 1, Table 2, Table 3. And in this data table description, you're going to put your title again. So New York City population growth from 1990 to 2020. Okay, because that's already pretty descriptive, you don't really need to describe anything else in there, though sometimes it is nice to have a more descriptive feature in there. If I were a scientist and I were looking for data to help support evidence of, let's say, something I'm currently researching, I would usually be searching for maybe something simple like this, where I can just go look straight at the data and read just that description and know exactly what's happening. But you could, I don't know, theoretically, like, let's say, bold all of this information because it's it is the title and the size or whatever. Let's make it a little bit smaller because I don't think it needs to be that big. Okay, and then I would maybe say, make it smaller again so that it all matches, and then say, this table represents, if my computer would stop glitching, there we go. This table represents the data collected from New York City during the years 1990 to 2020 regarding their total population of the metro area. Okay, so now I have a description. I want to give it a border, though. Again, this is it is like kind of like a little text box that I'm going to put on under my table. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And now that should have populated perfect right up here. So I'm going to go ahead and move this. Again, your table description and title should go below your data table. Okay, so now there we go. Now this fits. And if you want it to fit under your table perfectly, like I do, you can sit there and you can align that so that it fits perfectly. Okay, so now I have my table title, I have my borders, I have it centralized, I have my table description. Now I need to make a line graph. Okay, so in order to make the line graph, okay, you can actually just highlight all of your data, and you're going to go to Insert, Chart, and it should populate your graph directly there for you. Now, what you might want to do is, it might not include units. Like, of course, this doesn't actually have any units on it. So in your activity on Monday, you will need to include your units. So let's say it didn't populate the units for me, but I wanted to add those units in, right? I can click on this axis of population, and I can add, let's say, population humans, right? I don't know, what do we want our population to be? Okay, or number of humans or something. Okay, so number of humans. Okay, and then year is very descriptive on its own. And then title, you might want to make that more specific. Right now it's just titled the population versus year, but again, I might want to match my title, New York City population growth from 1990 to 2020. Okay, again, you can format and play around with these, like maybe you want that bold. I like the center align. Okay, you can change the color of your title if you want. Lots of things that you can do here to make it kind of prettier if you want to. Okay, so now we want to place our table in a space, and now I'm very limited because my screen share is limited to where I can record, but maybe I'm going to put this back up top or maybe halfway down. I don't know, it doesn't matter. And then I would create another one of these similar for the table, or I'm sorry, for the graph. However, graphs are, instead of called tables, they're called figures. So again, I would go to insert, I would drawing, okay, text box, and I'm going to make this one more simple and not play around with as much, but just to point out that it's called figure. This is the line graph of the New York City population growth from 1990 to 2020. Okay. Again, add a border. I don't know. Mine's. I didn't change the fonts or anything on this one because, again, I'm just trying to show you that instead we call it a figure, not a table. So now this would get lined up directly underneath your line graph. Okay, so again, on Monday, you guys are going to be working in small groups, creating a series of data tables and line graphs that we're going to be using for class almost every day for the rest of this unit. So that's all I wanted to go ahead and go over. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks, everybody.